The Cuddle Up ride was designed by Basixx Engineering in the 1920s. The prototype ride is said to have opened at Carsonia Park in Pennsylvania in 1929. The ride was somewhat like a modern teacups ride. Unlike a modern teacups, the riders could not control their spin and the cars moved differently along the ride. On a teacups ride, the rider cars are mounted to one point on a disc that rotates usually on top of another larger disc. On the original Cuddle Up, the car sat in a trough next to a set of 2 or more interlocking rotating gears. On the base of the cars under the ride floor, there were attachments to connect up to the rotating gears. The cars on top were free spinning and would be thrown from one gear to another. This design created aggressive lateral forces whenever a car transitioned from one gear to another. The intensity of these forces could be altered by controlling how fast these gears spun. These gears would be set up in any design a park desired, making for a unique ride experience. The original ride did not feature any kind of restraint, and it had a large gap in part of the car that was used for rider loading and unloading. This meant that there was a decent chance that riders not holding on would be ejected from the ride. This caused many Cuddle Ups to get seatbelts or doors that covered the opening in the ride's later years. Some famous installations of the original Cuddle Up include Coal Shaker at Hershey Park. This ride opened in 1972 as a replacement for an older Cuddle Up ride in the park. It was one of the last Cuddle Up rides ever built. It was a 5-gear version with custom-themed cars themed to coal. The ride closed at the end of the 1989 season. Interestingly, the ride was so loud that operators reportedly had to wear earplugs when the ride was in operation. There's also Iceberg at Dorney Park. Now, this ride originally opened in 1945 as a 4-gear outdoor attraction. By 1968, the ride was losing popularity, so Dorney Park decided to build a massive concrete iceberg around the ride and pump it full of air conditioning. The ride was updated to have flashing lights and disco music. The ride became a beloved part of Dorney Park for many years. In 1988 or 1989, the ride was closed and rethemed to Meteorite, with the outside of the ride repainted to black. In 1993, the ride would close forever as the last known operating Cuddle Up in the United States. Now, the original Cuddle Up at Carsonia Park would operate there until the park closed in 1950. After this, the ride would be refurbished by PTC and sold to Rocky Springs Park in Pennsylvania. Once this park closed, the ride was put into storage. For a short while, it was the only remaining Cuddle Up in existence. Though it was not operational, many hoped that this historic ride would one day be bought and rebuilt. Sadly, this did not happen, and a few years ago, one of the cars for the ride was found for sale on eBay for $3,500. The car sold, and it is now clear that the original Cuddle Up will never return, though PTC continued to claim to offer the ride through 2005 on their website. After the first few Cuddle Ups were produced by Basixx Engineering, the design was sold to Philadelphia Toboggan Company or PTC in the mid-1930s. PTC would continue to make the ride, though after World War II, its popularity began to decline. This prompted PTC to redesign the ride around 1960 as the Crazy Daisy. Unlike the larger Cuddle Up ride, the Crazy Daisy only featured 2 interlocking rotating gears. It was marketed as a family ride, though it's still more intense than most family rides. Later versions of the ride even came with gates or doors covering the large opening in the side of the car. PTC no longer produces this ride, however they do still offer parts for existing rides. A few of these rides do remain operating, with one of the most well-known being Crazy Daisy at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Though the Cuddle Up and Crazy Daisy are dead or dying off, their design inspired the ZAMPERLA Demolition Derby, which is still in production today. One of the large problems with the Cuddle Up and Crazy Daisy was the wear put on the cars when they switched from one gear to another. On ZAMPERLA's design, this is solved by only having a limited number of slots that the cars can slide into. This also allows the spinning plates to be flush with the rest of the ride area, making the ride much less of a tripping hazard and liability. ZAMPERLA also offers the ability for riders to control their own spin. Though the ZAMPERLA Demolition Derby is nowhere near as intense as the original ride, it's definitely nice to see the original design living on in some form. One of the most well-known installations of the Demolition Derby is Mater's Junkyard Jamboree at Disney's California Adventure. This ride is actually 2 identical rides that are each an enlarged version of the original design, featuring 4 plates that are each far larger than a standard Demolition Derby. The cars are also different, being inspired by whip rides. They're able to swing out with the lateral forces of the ride. Amusement Labs has produced a great video explaining how this ride works, and I have that video linked below. Currently, this is the only Cuddle Up ride in operation featuring more than 2 plates. And that's about everything I could find on these rides. Unfortunately, information is very hard to come by with all of these older rides, so if I missed something or said something that was incorrect, please correct me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.